This is Sports 225.
If he's by far the best one, he would play, wouldn't he?
Well, we always play the best players.
There you go, okay.
You try to make all your decisions in this business based on winning, and the one that's helped winning the most is to play the best players.
Right.
So it's not really that complicated a deal. Now, having
but then
good
again,
players,
right.
you got to do a great job of recruiting and get good players.
Right.
Nick Saban, the greatest college football coach of all time, retired last week. I'll set the whole show up in a bit, but check out what I asked him and what he said about Alabama in this old Sports Monday from 2003.
There's going to be a lot of balance in the SEC this year.
I'll sneak this in before we go to the break. The whole Alabama situation, I mean, from watching that from within your league, you must have shaken your head a couple of times. Said, what the hell's going on there?
Well, I will say this, that it is unusual for an institution to have the turmoil that they've had to kind of persevere for the last, several years. But, that's a strong program, lots of tradition, lots of good people there, and they have a lot of good football players.
Do you know Mike Price?
No, I don't know him. I know Mike Shula, but I don't know Mike Price very well.
Not a boring offseason in the SEC, nor in Alabama, nor for you either, but not in those kind of ways. That's good.
Nick Saban got to LSU in 2000. He came here sight unseen. He hadn't even seen campus when he did his first news conference. It was very cool, though, that his first major media appearance was with me on the old show Sports Monday. And for those of you who are seeing this for the first time, Sports Monday went well over 600 shows. We started it in 1995. And then it morphed into this show, which is Sports 225. And this is show like 410. So I've been doing this a really long time. It's 29 years. But those first times with Saban were really something. It was an hour show. It was live. And the very first show, Herb Vincent, then the SID, drove him to the studio. And we joked later that it was the longest 2 hours of our life. It was only an hour. But he got really good and fun to be with after that. But this first clip is from that first show.
The high school quarterback. I have a good friend named Ron Everhart. He's the basketball coach at McNeese State University. And he knows all about you, but he's never met you because he's a few years younger. But I don't know if you know who Ron is.
I know Ron, yeah.
Product of
I know his dad.
Fairmount,
played,
West Virginia.
Yeah.
Ron told me when he was a kid, he used to go to high school games at Fairmount and said, you were his hero. Now, what's up with Fairmount, though?
That.
And I asked this before. Rich Rodriguez from Fairmount,
right?
You, Ron, who's a very successful basketball coach, and a young lady named Mary Lou Retton. And that's pretty big time for a small town in, the middle of nowhere to some people's eyes.
I'm sure my wife would be a little disappointed that you didn't mention her being from Fairmont as well. And
what's her name?
Terry.
Hi, Terry from Fairmount. How are you?
But I don't know. I'm really not from Fairmont. Terry's from Fairmont. I lived out in the country. I lived in a rural area in a coal mining town, and only went to Fairmont when we went to the big city. So
the big city.
Yeah.
When you were a kid in West Virginia, and coal mining was really big in the 60s, that was a tough place, wasn't it? I mean, I've heard, it was per capita, it was like among the lowest in the country. It's cold, bitter winters, and a lot of times that produces people who do extremely well, tough conditions. Is there something to that?
Yeah, I think a little bit that everyone is a product of their environment, and I think I grew up in an area where, life was difficult for a lot of people.
Right.
I think it was hard-working people who had, great principles and values, and I feel fortunate to come from that kind of a culture, if you will, in terms of growing up, because I learned a lot from a lot of people. I mean, I had great coaches from the time I was in Pee Wee ball all the way through high school, and had great people in the community to teach lessons. And where I grew up, I had great parents, but yet anybody that saw me on the street corner were like my parents, because they had the same kind of principles and values for me as my parents did. And I think that's a benefit. And I think if we had more of that right now in society, maybe we would have a few less problems. But I know one thing, you learned how to make commitments to things, and you had to work hard, and that was the culture that we came from.
One of the things we talked about was his perceived personality.
And I really enjoyed it.
Of course, you're still undefeated, and that's a great thing. But I mean, how about like last week, Glenn Guilbeau had a story in The Advocate where he defends your personality. I mean, I've talked to you before. You don't seem like that bad a guy.
Well, I never thought so, but I think sometimes that reputations get developed, and sometimes when you go through a circumstance and a situation like leaving Michigan State, some people are not as positive as maybe they would have been. Kind of like your girlfriend is not real positive if you jilled her after 5 years. She doesn't go around town saying good things about you. So sometimes those things get kind of overblown in some ways, and I'm just very pleased and happy with all the people that we've been able to meet and how the people here in Baton Rouge and all over the state have, kind of accepted us as a family and have been very supportive.
Going around.
All right, this is Sports 225. I'm Lee Feinswag. We're recapping Nick Saban, who retired after the greatest college football coaching career of all time. We'll be right back.
Congratulations, East Baton Rouge. You did it. You topped every big city in the country. You envisioned an ambitious multi-year reinvention of our park system. And we, as a community, embarked on a multi-year effort to reimagine our parks and facilities. And all that work didn't go unnoticed. You imagined, we delivered. Gold. Breck, your parks, our purpose.
We're back on Sports 225, and it's me. And I'm recapping shows from when Nick Saban was with us from 2000 to 2004. We had a lot of fun times, and he was really good to talk to. In this next segment coming up, I asked him about how he became a defensive guy.
You are regarded by many as a defensive genius. I know you take it very seriously. No, I mean that seriously. And but you were a quarterback in high school, weren't you?
Yeah.
And but the old saying, offense sells tickets, defense wins games. I mean, when I was a little kid, I drew football plays, but from the offensive end. When did you become a defensive guy where that became your mindset and the main focus for you?
Well, I think because I was a quarterback and I really spent 1 year as a college player on the freshman team as a quarterback, had a good understanding of offense, formations, adjustments, how you block plays, pass routes, how you read routes, middle of the field open, middle of the field closed, basic fundamental things that because I was too short as a quarterback, I got moved to defensive back. So I had a pretty good understanding of offense. And as a player, I enjoyed playing in the secondary. And I think when you play in the secondary, you have to understand big picture. If you play line positions, you don't have to understand big pictures because things happen in small places, and your initial key comes from something that's pretty immediate. But you got to see more than one thing as a DB. And I had good coaches. Don James was a defensive coach. He was a secondary coach, and playing for him as a head coach, I think I learned a lot. And when I started being a GA, I learned a lot. So my perspective just came: how do you apply these defensive things to offensive concepts? And the good understanding that I gained from being a quarterback has helped me a lot as a defensive coach.
This next segment with Nick Saban was before the fourth season, after LSU had won the national championship the year before.
God, I hate to see you a few years from now after you,
Right.
after that next national championship. All right. New players, freshmen and transfers. Tell me a few who are going to make an impact this year, who you think will step in and see significant playing time.
Well, we're hopeful that some of the freshmen will be able to make a contribution to the team. But again, that maturity thing that goes along with being a freshman is something that you're always concerned about with those guys. It'll certainly help us. If Ben Wilkerson can help us in the offensive line, if some of those young offensive linemen can be mature enough to become backups or guys that we could go to if we have some injury problems. Marquise Hill, Brandon Washington as defensive linemen certainly are the body types that you're looking for. At those positions. Michael Clayton has, a lot of ability as a wide receiver. Benny Brazil is one of the fastest guys in the country as a wide receiver. Corey Webster is a newcomer who has ability and needs to contribute to this football team in some kind of way, whether it's to be a productive receiver or be in some other position. We have some young players coming along that We need some people to step up at linebacker so we get some consistency in terms of depth at that position, so that if we do lose some of our good players, we're not going to have, a catastrophic situation there relative to the drop-off in performance. So there's a lot of good players coming up. This freshman class, I think there's several guys that can contribute. Which one of those guys are going to be mature enough to do it? We'll just have to wait and see.
Of course, all of his teams at LSU, he had tremendous players. But what's really interesting is how many of the guys have gone on to media. And you can't watch ESPN, for example, without seeing Marcus Spears, the Baton Rouge guy, who's just everywhere. He's ubiquitous. But also, one of the most accomplished media people who came from that team is Ryan Clark, who is also a pretty good football player. And I asked him about Ryan.
How good is Ryan Clark, or how good can he be?
He's a very good player, and he's a very smart player. Makes all the checks in the secondary. He's a signal caller back there. If there's one thing that we really wanted him to work on, what was, making those plays in the deep part of the field. He made some great plays last year in the deep part of the field and some great interceptions, and had a couple other opportunities that we'd like to see him cash in on and really become, a ball hawking type guy. He's gotten a little bit bigger over the summer. He's a little bit stronger, which for the way we play, our safeties are going to make a lot of tackles. They got to be durable, and he made it through the year last year, and I think he'll even be more physical as a player this year.
Not that it matters to you, but a great interview, a good go-to guy. We got to have him.
Well, I might put him on the
since
you need him, we might take him.
Yeah, right. Just got him suspended from the weekend league. Oh, you're tough. You're getting a lot tougher. I hate to see you a few years from now after you.
Right.
Oh, after that next national championship.
We'll be back after this with more from clips with Nick Saban from 20 years ago and more.
Breck teamed up to reimagine your parks, and you imagined big. With your help, we went to work, creating 12 beautiful community parks across the parish. A family-sized water park, miles and miles of trails, and parks just for your dogs. There are more places to splash, to explore, to run wild, and even soar. You imagined, we delivered gold. Breck, your parks, our purpose.
We're back on Sports 225. This is a show where I've pulled out a lot of old clips from when Nick Saban was a frequent guest on Sports Monday. Heading into the 2003 season, there finally was not a quarterback controversy at LSU. Matt Mock was the man.
At this point in the show, after doing it this long, I'd be remiss in finally not getting to the quarterbacks. So who's going to start at quarterback?
I don't think there's any question about that. I don't think there's ever been any question about that. Matt Mock had a fantastic spring. He was doing an outstanding job last year up until the Florida game, where unfortunately for all of us received got a kind of a freak injury on his foot. He's had a phenomenal summer in terms of rehab and ability to sustain and condition and run and get back to where he probably was a year ago. And he really wasn't there in the spring, but he did a lot more in the spring than we thought he could. And he made a tremendous amount of improvement in the spring as a passing quarterback. And maybe the silver lining of not being able to run around actually enhanced his ability to improve as a passing quarterback. He had to develop patience and timing, understanding, and he did make a significant amount of improvement. And we were a much, much better passing team this spring than we were a year ago at any point in time. Marcus Randall made a lot of improvement last year when he played, so we feel a lot better about the depth and the quality that we have there. And I expect Marcus Randall to come into camp with the idea that he's competing for the job and that we have every confidence that he could be a winning quarterback for us. We're going to try to develop the young players that we have as well, and hopefully one of those guys will emerge as a guy that can be a solid third or compete to be a two. So we feel a lot better about that situation than we did a year ago.
One of the things that always came up with LSU football while Nick Saban was there was he going to the NFL? It was like an annual game at the end of every season, and we talked about that.
you start your 4th year here. In each season, in each spring after the previous 3, has there been one of those seasons where an NFL team has not called you or an NFL rumor has not pursued you?
Well, I think the latter's probably true because of guys like you, there's always NFL rumors, all right? But, from my standpoint, it would have to be a phenomenal situation because, I think we have a special place here at LSU. I think being the only school in the state of Louisiana, the high school football that we have in this state, the proximity of a lot of good other programs and football players in Texas and throughout the Southeast, including Florida, the commitment that we made as an institution to have a top-notch program to develop people, students, the academic center, the academic support program, the graduation rate, the support that we have, the great stadium that we have to play in. There's a lot of positive things here that really makes it fun to be a part of, trying to build a nationally recognized dominant program. And
well, I think we recognize that you like it here and that you've done well and you enjoy it. But
absolutely.
But those things still pop up. I mean, did you go to Jackson?
That.
Like, did you go to Jacksonville last year?
No.
You just talked to them on the phone?
No, they came here.
Oh,
So, and those things,
I mean, an
come up.
NFL team would be silly not to call you or to pursue you because.
But in most cases, I choose not to be involved with those things because of what we're doing here, and I think a lot of people probably feel that those things have a negative effect, on our ability to do our job. But while they're saying that, we still have the best recruiting class in the country. I think the NFL experience and is a positive for most high school players in terms of you're recruiting them, that they know that you are respected by the league. And the fact that you're being considered as a head coach in the league, whether you choose to do it or not, is not all a negative. There's a positive side to that I sometimes feel that people don't quite understand.
Oh, no, I bet it helps when you talk to a kid.
There was a player once that we were recruiting, and the public was going mad about, how can you're going to ruin our recruiting class because your name came up for this job, unbeknownst to me that my name came up for this NFL job. And I would just say this, when I approached one of our recruits and said, is this affecting you? And he said, no, the other coaches told me that, you were being considered for an NFL job. And I said, well, did that bother you? And he says, no, I just asked him, if your coach is so good, why aren't they considering him for an NFL job? So, it can go both ways, and you try to make a positive out of it.
That's good. I mean, it's got to be similar in a way to like what Rick Pitino, that same kind of situation. Have you ever talked to him about it by chance?
No, and he was a basketball coach at Syracuse in 1977 when I was at Syracuse. In fact, our offices were, close together, but I haven't kept touch with him. But he's a guy that's going back and forth, and that's something I've tried to avoid doing. And
well, I don't think he'll go back to the NBA anymore.
Well, he's done a tremendous job wherever he's been, but especially in college.
All right, we've got one more segment left on Sports 225, looking back at all these old clips from when Nick Saban was my guest on Sports Monday.
Congratulations, East Baton Rouge. You did it. You topped every big city in the country. You envisioned an ambitious multi-year reinvention of our park system. And we, as a community, embarked on a multi-year effort to reimagine our parks and facilities. And all that work didn't go unnoticed. You imagined, we delivered. Gold. Breck, your parks, our purpose.
All right, we're back on Sports 225. This is our last segment, and it's a show where we've pulled together clips from when Nick Saban was the coach at LSU and appeared on this show, which was previously Sports Monday and is now Sports 225. We had some great visits. It was really fun because we covered so much ground over the years. He came on from the time he came to LSU before he coached, and then every year he did at least one show with us. And but I think that this next segment was the single best one.
You know, I think those things get a little overstated here, you know, and
Wow.
maybe we ought to start dividing by 2, you know, when we hear some of these things. Like, however many stitches I got, divide by 2.
All right, now hold on,
However
hold on.
long I was underwater, divide by 2, and you just might have.
All right,
the
bonus,
story right.
bonus segment here, because you get the quarterback thing, and we're just going to go ahead and get on the fall off the boat thing. So what happened?
I fell off the boat.
How'd you fall off the boat?
I was carrying a wakeboard off the boat. I slipped off the back ski rack on the Mastercraft.
This is over at your place in Georgia.
Right.
Right.
And hit my head on the pier or the deck or whatever you want, and knocked me out, and I went down in the water for a short period of time.
But listen, if you get knocked out and you fall in the water, that is life-threatening. I mean,
Maybe.
it's just fact of life.
But I woke up on the bottom and said, I don't belong here. And I paddled my way to the top.
How deep was the water?
Probably about 8 feet.
Wow.
So, but I got to the top, and then a couple of fellows that were visiting helped me out. But, you know, I mean, it was so overstated in the press. And for me to get calls from all over the country, from every professional and friendly person that I know, to see if I'm okay. And this is 2 weeks after the fact now. They already took the
This
stitches
was
out,
July
and I'm
4th,
here.
you said this happened, right?
It happened July 4th, but it didn't come out in the media until probably
2
the
weeks
19th
later.
or 20th.
Right.
So, you know, it was just kind
Well,
of
how many hundreds of stitches did you have then?
divided by 2. Probably really about 25. I didn't really count them, but I mean, I heard 50. I mean, I've heard
You must have had a hell of a headache the next day.
not really that bad. The only disappointing thing for me was I couldn't go in the water for a few days on vacation with my kids.
That's great. Well, anyway, I'm sure everybody's happy that you came out of it fine, that in fact you did not drown.
And the good news is just like there was a silver lining in Matt Mock's injury.
Right.
I want all of our fans to know this really did knock some sense into me.
So on the old Sports Monday, which was a live 1-hour show, we had a 2-minute warning. A guy named Gary Governall made it an art form, and it was pretty funny. But that first show that Nick Saban was on, he really didn't smile much, and I was kind of worried that he even had a sense of humor. He proved later that he did, but he was really taken aback, as you can tell from the 2-minute warning that Gary did that night.
With the people that we were able to attract to come here, and I think we have an outstanding staff, and I'm just looking forward to working with them more.
Was it hard for you to come here and not be able to have any of your staff come with you from Michigan State? Because I would have to think that at first you thought, hey.
Hey Lee, this is your 2-minute warning, 2 minutes left in the game. Hey Coach, I'm sure that no matter what happens, you'll make the right decision when you name your starting quarterback, Rohan Davey.
We're the only show in America with a 2-minute warning. And they pretty much
right.
have carte blanche to do whatever they want to do.
Good. Well, to answer your question about the Michigan State, I think it was most important, you know, for me that someone on the coaching staff had the opportunity to get the job at Michigan State. And if one of the sacrifices that we needed to make was all the coaches stay there, it would have been a little bit easier for me. I'm not saying better, easier, if a few of the coaches would have come here that knew the system. But I'm really looking forward to the people that we have, and I think we have an outstanding staff.
All right. I hope you've enjoyed this. It was really fun for me to go back in the archives and dig all these up. Those times that we had talking with Coach Saban were really special. I haven't seen him in a really long time. When this goes up on YouTube, I'll make sure that he gets a link. Hopefully somebody will forward to him, and hopefully he'll enjoy it. And I hope that you enjoyed watching this. It was really fun. I'm Lee Feinswag, and this has been Sports 225.
At carnival time by Baton Rouge Bay, that's the site of my story. At Spanish Town Mardi Gras, things can get blurry. See the mowers marching.
We got to wrap this up. I appreciate you
That
being
was the
here.
worst 2-minute warning of all the years we've been here.
It probably was,
All
but
right,
we'll
go
work
ahead.
on it.